My name is Susan Harper. I'm 59 years old, a widow, and I live in a quiet neighborhood in Oregon. For nearly 2 decades, I've worked as an office manager at a law firm, raising my 2 children, Claire, now 31, and Nathan, 28. I've spent most of my adult life ensuring they never faced the struggles I did. But last Tuesday, an email from Claire changed everything. It had no subject line, just her name in my inbox. I smiled, expecting a quick update or a sweet note about her upcoming wedding. We'd recently discussed her plans, and I'd already contributed $30,000 for the venue, photographer, and her favorite florist from college. But when I opened the email, my smile faded. "Mom," it began. "No, dear Mom, just a label." Claire explained that she, her fiancé James, and his family had finalized the guest list for their Napa Valley ceremony. After much thought, they decided I should watch via Livestream, not in person. James's mother wanted to keep things intimate. The final line stung. "If you want to be a part of it, you can watch through the Google Meet link we've created. Should be just like being there. LOL." I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. Something inside me shifted, like the ground had cracked, but I was still standing. I replied with 4 words. "Sure, enjoy your day." No emotion, no argument, just a quiet withdrawal. I knew those words would echo louder than any scream. I didn't want to fight or cry. I wanted clarity. The silence would speak for itself. I closed my laptop, finished my cold coffee, and went to work like it was any other Tuesday. But it wasn't. That was the day I stopped pretending my sacrifices meant anything to my daughter. That was the day everything began to change. The drive to the office was quiet, Oregon's early spring air still chilly, but I barely noticed. My mind circled one question. How did we get here? I've worked 18 years at Bennett and Turner Law. Not glamorous, but stable. Stability was crucial after my husband died suddenly when the kids were teenagers. I remember standing by our old washing machine, bills spread across the counter, calculating how to afford groceries and Claire's college deposit. I worked extra shifts, canceled vacations, skipped birthdays, telling myself there'd be time for me later. There never was. Every penny went to Claire and Nathan. When Claire changed majors twice, I paid for extra credits. When she moved to New York for a short-lived job, I covered her deposit and flight. When she cried through her second breakup at 27, I flew out, held her hand, and made tea in her unfamiliar kitchen. When Nathan wanted to buy a house with his fiancée, I co-signed the mortgage and wrote a $15,000 check without hesitation. I never kept score. That's what mothers do, right? But that email made me feel like a transaction, useful until I wasn't, like I had an expiration date. At the office, my boss, David, noticed something was off. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, setting a latte from the cafe downstairs on my desk. I wanted to tell him my daughter had disinvited me from her wedding, but I smiled and said I hadn't slept well. He didn't push. That small act of kindness, coffee, silence, nearly broke me. It reminded me I still existed, even if only quietly. At lunchtime, my phone buzzed. Claire again. Voicemails, texts. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk. This isn't funny." I didn't listen. I sipped my latte and thought maybe it was time to stop always answering, to stop playing a role in someone else's story when I wasn't allowed on the stage. That afternoon, I made a decision that would shift everything. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I was going to act. After work, I drove to First Federal Bank. Michael, the branch manager who'd helped me with college funds and retirement plans, greeted me warmly. "Mrs. Harper, what can I do for you today?" I sat down, purse on the floor, voice calm. I need to cancel a wire transfer. He blinked. The one to the Napa venue? Yes, that one. He hesitated. There may be a fee, but may I ask why? The circumstances have changed, I said, offering no more. He checked his screen. You're in luck. It hasn't processed yet. He paused. Are you sure, Mrs. Harper? $50,000 is significant. I nodded. I'm sure. That $50,000 was the next payment, on top of the $30,000 already sent. $80,000 total for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. I signed the forms and left without a second thought. By the time I got home, there were 9 missed calls from Claire, 2 from Nathan, and a voicemail. Mom, please don't do this. I turned off my phone, poured a glass of red wine I'd saved for a canceled Thanksgiving visit from Claire, and sat on the porch in the fading sunlight. Birds chirped. A neighbor's dog barked, and memories flooded in. Birthdays planned alone. Holiday dinners waiting for calls that never came. Sacrifices no one noticed. Shoes I didn't buy. A car I drove for 14 years. Vacations I postponed. I thought about James's mother, who barely knew Claire yet held more sway than I did. The woman who'd carried Claire through every hardship. I thought about Claire's LOL, as if watching her wedding on a screen was a joke. And I thought about myself, not as a mother or widow, but as a woman. What did I want? Peace, dignity, a life not defined by being useful to those who only appeared when they needed something. At 9:00 p.m., the doorbell rang. It was Nathan, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, holding his phone like a shield. Mom, why aren't you answering? Claire's freaking out. I shut the door calmly. Hello to you too, he sighed, pacing. She says you're not coming to the wedding now, that you're being difficult. I laughed. Difficult? For not attending a wedding I was uninvited from? He shifted uncomfortably. James's parents are footing most of the bill, Mom. You know how traditional they are. I raised an eyebrow. Traditional? I already paid $30,000. I was about to send $50,000 more. That's not tradition. That's a fee. He froze. Wait, you were sending another 50? Was, I said, sipping my wine. Not anymore. Nathan's face went pale. Mom, they're counting on that. The venue, the food, not my problem anymore, I said evenly. His voice rose. Of course it's your problem. She's your daughter. And I'm her mother, I said quietly. A mother told to stay home and watch from a screen. He ran his hands through his hair, agitated. You always make everything about yourself. That was it. Something inside me gave way. Get out of my house. What? You heard me, Nathan. Get out. Mom. No, I said, firm but soft. I've given everything, and I'm done being the villain in a story I wrote with love. He stood there a moment, then turned and left. The door clicked shut, louder than any slam. In my living room, heart pounding, I realized something startling. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The next morning, I woke to 43 missed calls and frantic messages from Claire. They started passive-aggressive. Mom, we need to talk. Why are you doing this? This is childish. Then the tone shifted. The venue called. The payment didn't go through. We'll lose everything if we don't pay by tomorrow. James's parents are furious. They said this proves they were right about you. At 3:24 a.m., she sent, I don't understand why you're doing this to me. I smiled into my coffee. Of course she didn't understand. Claire had grown up with my sacrifices woven so tightly into her life, she never questioned where the comfort came from. The security, the stability. She assumed it would always be there, that I would always be there. But not this time. Later, an email popped into my inbox. Subject line, "Please don't ruin my wedding." I opened it without expectation. "Mom," Claire wrote, "I know you're upset about the Livestream situation, but this is extreme. We've lost the venue deposit, and if we don't pay the balance by end of day, the caterer walks. James's parents are beyond upset. They're saying this proves you can't be reasoned with. Please don't do this. We can talk about you attending, but we need the funds first." There it was. They'd talk about letting me attend now that the money was gone. Not an apology, not reflection, a negotiation. As if my presence at my daughter's wedding could be bartered. I didn't respond. I closed the email and returned to work. Around noon, David stopped by my desk. "Lunch?" he offered. "That new Italian place just opened." I almost declined, as usual, but something shifted. Maybe it was the clarity of the past 24 hours. I nodded. "I'd like that." Over pasta, he talked about his grandkids, how exhausting yet beautiful it was to chase them. His eyes were soft, real. He paused and said gently, "Forgive me, Susan, but you seem lighter today." I surprised myself. I told him everything. Claire, the email, the wedding, the money, what I did. He didn't judge or try to fix it. He just said, "Sometimes the hardest part of love is setting boundaries, especially with those we've given the most to." He squeezed my hand briefly. "I think you did the right thing." For the first time in a long time, I believed it too. When I returned, more calls, more texts, but I didn't answer. My silence spoke volumes. That evening, pulling into my driveway, the porch light clicked on automatically. Everything looked still, peaceful, but someone was on my front steps. As I approached, I recognized her, Lily, Claire's best friend since 5th grade. She'd spent countless weekends at our house, baking cookies, watching movies, giggling in sleeping bags until dawn. I hadn't seen her in years. "Mrs. Harper?" she said softly. "I'm sorry to drop by like this." "It's fine," I replied, unlocking the door. "Would you like some tea?" She followed me into the kitchen, her eyes scanning the familiar walls like they held old echoes. I filled the kettle and waited. "Claire sent you?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. "She's a mess. They lost the venue. The florist dropped out. James's parents are threatening to cancel the wedding." I said nothing, placing 2 mugs on the counter. "She's panicking," Lily continued. "She knows she messed up but doesn't know how to fix it." "Is that why you're here? To fix it?" She shook her head. "No, I'm here to ask, is there anything she can say or do to change your mind?" I paused. Would an apology change how it felt to be excluded, used like a bank account, told I wasn't welcome unless my money was? "No," I said quietly. "There isn't." Her shoulders sagged. "Not even if she apologizes?" I handed her a mug. "Words are easy, Lily, especially when people are desperate. But those who love you don't wait until you cut them off to see you." She nodded slowly, looking into her tea. "I get it. Even if she doesn't, I'm sorry, Mrs. Harper." "You don't need to be," I replied. We stood in silence, 2 women from different generations connected by one hard truth. Sometimes love has limits. Sometimes the only way to be seen is to walk away. Lily didn't stay long. She didn't argue. She thanked me, hugged me gently, and left. I closed the door on a version of myself I'd outgrown. The wedding never happened as planned. They scrambled for another venue, but everything was booked or too expensive without my money. According to Nathan, they had a small backyard ceremony weeks later, just a few relatives and James's parents. I wasn't invited, and this time, I didn't need to be. Claire sent one more email, long, emotional, half apology, half justification. I read it once and archived it. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. There's a strange peace in letting go, not in rage, but in clarity. For the first time in decades, I woke up not wondering who needed something from me, not bracing for another guilt trip disguised as love. I made a new rule. If my presence is negotiable, so is my effort. I go to work, read novels, joined a pottery class, have dinner with friends who see me, not what I can give. I've learned something I wish I'd known sooner. You don't have to burn yourself to keep others warm.